Hey guys, welcome to Talkin Cinema with Mike. During this podcast, I discuss the magic of film with a special guest, and we discuss it from a specific point of view. Today, my guest is Kathie Moon, who is a film teacher, and today we will be discussing Martin McDonagh's latest film, The Banshees of Inisherin. Welcome back to the podcast, Kathie.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Mike. How you doing?
Good. So last we met, we talked about The Banshees of Inisherin, one of my favorite films of the year. Actually, one of our favorite films of the year.
Yes.
So from rewatching it, what did you get from just the editing perspective of the film?
I think what I saw was, editing a film is like how the storyteller knits together these different elements. Primarily, he uses things like the characters of the movie, the landscape or the settings, and the music. And so when I watched it this time, I was really watching how he was carrying forth the character to tell the story. And I was very impressed with, it's one other thing I wanted to say was it's a very, Michael McDonagh is also a playwright. And so he's just really a great wordsmith. And I felt that this movie was very theatrical in the sense that I could see this as a play, which is really interesting. But I guess the thing that struck me the most about the editing was how beautiful the development of the, end of this relationship and how Patrick could not accept it. And he kept coming back and coming back to figure out, well, why didn't Colum want to be his friend again? And that's what carries forth the movie for a really long time in it, at least the first half of the movie. And then things go into high gear when Colum cuts off the four fingers, the movie actually moves into more hyperdrive. There have been so many other things, the development of each of the characters, but that's when it goes in and then action happens one right after the other. Big changes occur. But that was what I was really so impressed with. What about you? What did you think about the editing? What really impressed you?
It's just love editing in movies, like how it like transitions to another scene and like shows us like what's happening, like what gets us ready for what happens next. Like I like how towards the end when like Podrick is writing his letter to Siobhan after she leaves.
Yes.
And like they talk about, his relationship with Calm and Dominic drowning himself in the river and Jenny dying and who's gonna take care of the animals, and also with Calm's house burning. Like they just showed the transition from Dominic in the river to the animals eating and the house burning. Like it really was showing like the real like wrap up of this beautiful, tragic, darkly humorous movie.
Yeah, it is so funny. The other thing that really struck me about the editing was how very funny this movie is. And I was thinking about certain scenes that they did that were just absolutely, to me, the most hilarious movies, or most hilarious sections of it. One of the scenes was the scene with the student. Remember the music student when Patrick gets jealous of this music student that's come in and talked to Colum at the pub? And then,
I do remember that.
Right. And then the student leaves after finishing talking with Colum, and Patrick is driving along in his car and offers him a ride. And so anyway, the guy takes a ride with Patrick, and then Patrick tells him that his mother is dying, or no, his father is dying. And he's telling him, a bald-faced lie. first of all, in the script is hilarious. First of all, he says, well, your mother is dying. And then the Declan says, well, my mother is already dead. Okay. Then the next thing is, and he says, Patrick says, well, you know, it's really your father that's dying, that he's been hit by a bread truck. And then Declan says, oh my God. He says, that I can't believe that, because that's how my mother died, by a bread truck. And then Declan says, oh my goodness, if that's the same bread truck company, I'm going to kill them all. I mean, it is, you know, it is so funny. I mean, this is like what Black humor is, you know.
Yeah, like one of my favorite like funny lines in the movie is when Podrick and Dominic are sitting on the wall and they're drinking and we're talking about the Irish Civil War, and Dominic is like, you know how I feel about war, I'm again him. Wars and soap.
That's right. War and soap. Oh my God, I know. There are just so many funny lines in this one. The other one, I really like the way they bring in the editing when they bring in Mrs. McCormick, the lady who is sort of, if you wanted to say, well, where is the banshee in the Banshees of Inisherin?
Yes,
exactly. He is sort of it. Remember, banshees are this like mythical person who screams all the time, but what she's screaming about is that somebody's going to die. So we see Mrs. McCormick on the road a lot of times when people are going places, but she sort of just pops up. And it's always really interesting. And as her scenes continue through the movie, remember it starts when she is visiting with Siobhan at Patrick's house. And Patrick, you know, is there because he didn't stay at the pub because Colin wasn't there. Okay. And then they have this conversation. And of course, he really embarrasses Siobhan. And Mrs. McCormick makes some snide comments or truthful comments, you know, because of course she's heard all the stuff about Colin not wanting to be friends anymore. Okay. Then the next time we see her on the road, and we see her just standing there smoking her pipe. Then in another scene, the scene that is particularly poignant to me was when we see Siobhan, when Siobhan has decided to leave, and she's standing on the shore and she's looking across the lake, and she sees Mrs. McCormick on the other side, and Mrs. McCormick is beckoning Siobhan, almost tempting her, if you could think of it that way, for her to come over and visit. Or is she trying to beckon her to jump into the lake and drown? You know, there's all these kind of things you could read into it. And then, of course, Dominic pops up. And Dominic pops up and scares Siobhan to death. And they sort of put Mrs. McCormick is sort of forgotten for a moment as Dominic makes his plea for Siobhan, you know, where he says to her, well, you know, is there any possibility you could ever fall in love, you know, with a guy like me?
Right.
And oh, she is so tender to him. She says no, you know, but she is so kind to him.
And, you know, and that scene right there, that's why Barry Keoghan's getting all the best supporting actor buzz.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, all his scenes are great. He has each one of his scenes is so great. But that one is really, really great. And, you know, it also provides fodder for what happens later, you know, since he is one of the people that kills themselves on the island. And so that's, you know, this rejection by Siobhan. Also, his disillusionment with Patrick, you know, when Patrick tells him about how mean he was to the music student, you know, remember when they're having that conversation? I mean, it's just like incredible. I mean, really, really. And the thing that Dominic says is, I always thought you were a good one. You know, I always thought you were the best of them. but this is the meanest thing I have ever heard anybody say.
I know Dominic is like the most gentle person on the island.
That's
Wouldn't
right.
harm a fly.
I know. In every way, he is like the lowest common denominator. Yeah. So, that was that. And one more of Mrs. McCormick that I wanted to mention was the fact when he sees Mrs. McCormick on the road, and she says to him, "There's going to be a death soon," and then, Patrick says, "Oh, I don't think so." And then Mrs. McCormick says, "Well, I don't think it's going to be you or your sister, and I hope not." And then she says, "Well, there could be two deaths." It's like this kind of menacing, she's such a weird old lady, It's like, and she's also like, all the people on the island seem to be very, very short with their words, They just sort of say things. And then we have to figure out what the heck they're really saying. But that was great. So I really enjoyed the way the editor of the movie used these different characters and these different, like Dominic's part, Mrs. McCormick's part, and Shaban's too. When I watched the movie this time, I was looking at Shaban, and oh my God, is she not phenomenal? Did you think, her acting and
Carrie Condon's a wonderful actress, Kathie. She's definitely getting an Oscar nomination.
oh, absolutely.
All four of them are.
Yeah. And it's just really beautiful the way, the things that she does to try to help her brother. And, she tries several times, talks to Colum twice. She talks to Patrick. Remember how she lets Dominic stay there one night, even though, as we know, Dominic is really a loose cannon and really like the most dingbatty kind of person, So he really makes her mad. And so to me,
Yeah, I
those were
remember
like,
the dinner conversation. He's like, "So you was never wild."
yes, right. And she starts getting really mad then, and that's really funny. It's funny, but it's sad. But you're right. This is like the humor in this thing. We don't want to laugh in this movie because it's a really sad story, but we have to laugh because these things are really, really funny, about human nature,
Yep.
what's revealed. So anyway, those were a couple of the kind of things that I really liked with the editing, was how, how they move things along. I really liked, I was really able to see, how all that Patrick does to try to win him back, win Colum back. And the last thing he does, of course, which is at the instigation of Dominic, he says, well, maybe the guy just needs to be, you need to go in there and be tough with him. That's what Dominic has suggested. So then Colum goes in there and acts tough with Colum. And then Colum says, yes, you go on down to the pub. And then that's when he cuts off the four fingers and takes him to Patrick's house and throws him at the door. And that's when everything starts moving in fast gear. Because at that point, remember, that's where Siobhan has gone to the pub to tell, to get Colum, to get Patrick to come home with her so she can talk to him about something important, and that's when, of course, she's going to tell him that she's leaving. So anyway, the two of them walk back to the house, and lo and behold, they see Colum walking away from their house, and his hand is dripping blood. And you can see the shock on their face. Yes. And then they walk up to their house, and, the fingers are there. And Siobhan goes in the house and just packs up her stuff and leaves right then. So we have this first, Patrick has this huge shock about his sister leaving. The next thing, after his sister leaves, then he goes outside and he finds the donkey dead. His best friend, and he's all alone, literally.
Yep, Calm is pretty. I mean, he has like the other animals, but like Jenny was special.
Yeah, Jenny was his pet. Was you could see in the movie too. It's really beautiful how once Colum is sort of out of the picture, you see Patrick really, wanting to let the donkey more in the house, which of course Siobhan didn't want. And you see how she becomes more important. But then the really tragic thing is when he brings her in and we see the scene where the donkey's laying on his lap, in his house after he brings her in after she's dead. I mean, it was almost like a Pieta scene from, the famous Pieta scene with the Virgin Mary holding the dead Jesus. I mean, there's a whole bunch of those around in Italian and other sculptures,
Oh,
That's
I never.
really,
Oh, I don't really follow artwork. I never even knew there was such a picture.
well, this is like a really famous thing that's in Rome. It's at the Vatican. It was carved by Michelangelo, but there are other people who have done this too. But it's just the abject, grief of a mother who loses her son. And of course, that would be the same thing. I don't know if you've ever lost a pet, but for me, you really grieve for a long time if you lose a pet. You know, I have kitty cats, and so I have kitty cats, and I'm on my like fourth or fifth one in my life. So, I have them for about 15 or 20 years, and then I have to
Yeah,
get.
like I have two female cats here, but I
Uh-huh.
had a male one who was an orange tabby who died in May.
Oh, yes, it's so hard. So that's the kind of feeling that that's what really gets Patrick thinking really for the first time. I think before then, he's really just feeling the loss of his friendship. But when he loses his pet, that's when he decides that he is angry and he is going to make Colum pay.
Yeah, and the thing is that I had noticed he burns down the house, but he saves his dog,
Right,
Calm's
exactly.
dog, the sheepdog.
That's right. That's right. Well, the dog was outside anyway. But when Patrick goes the next day to burn down the house, that's exactly right. He makes sure that the dog is outside, but he doesn't look inside, but we see the filmmaker shows us that Colin is inside the house.
Right.
But of course, another irony thing is the fact that they when he burns down the house is made out of concrete. Okay. So the only thing that burns is the wood, and the wood is the door frames, the window frames, and the roof. Okay. And of course, when the roof collapses, which is a thatch roof, when that collapses, of course, it burns everything inside the house, but it doesn't really destroy the house. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, so like and towards the end, like the last scene of the movie is Podrick and Calm on the
No,
beach, and
right.
Podrick returns his dog to him.
That's right. That's right. Because Patrick thought, of course, that Colum had died there. And then when Colum walks up, again, it's like this incredible irony. And it's really kind of funny, because Patrick thought that he had killed, Colum, but he had sort of gotten a new pet too out of it. Okay. But of course, as soon as the dog saw his old master, the dog went to Colum. And then, of course, Colum says to him, "Thank you so much for for taking care of my dog." Oh my God, is that not funny? I mean, really. So you can see that this is going to go on. You can see that, they have a war going on between the two of them. Mm.
Okay, guys. So during the Banshees of Inisherin, there is an Irish civil war happening in the next island over. This had me think of current tragic events happening in the world today, one of which is the ongoing struggle for the people of the Ukraine. People there are suffering, and we have to do our part into making it right. You can help by logging on to donate.amnestyusa.org and donating money for these people in desperate need. Thank you.
It's such a great movie. And I just think it's really one of those great movies we're going to remember for a long time.
Yeah, like you think this is going to be like a movie that's studied like in film classes for years to come?
I think so, definitely, because the acting is so good, the script, everything is great about it. The music too. The music is really beautiful. The music is, he has the same guy who uses music, Carter Burwell, and he
Yep.
is a great guy. He also does the Coen brother movies. So that's another thing. But the one thing that McDonough told Carter Burwell in terms of when he wrote the music for the film is no Irish sounding film. No Irish sounding music. Okay. So that's really interesting. So that sort of changes things. When we're seeing Ireland, like really rural, real Ireland, but what we're hearing are sort of what's going on in people's minds, which is not about Ireland. And I thought it was really powerful. And of course, in the last section of the movie, we hear a lot of this sort of classical churchy music, hymnal kinds of things or opera kinds of things in the movie, because it is terribly sad, when the donkey dies, all of that.
Like I thought the Irish landscape in the movie was really beautiful too.
It was. You remember the opening of the film? I always look at the opening of the film. And so what we see when the movie opens, it's like cloudy. And then we see all this beautiful green landscape. And you can see how it's all in little squares, like different farms. And then we come over the farms and we find out that that must be real Ireland. Okay. And then we go ahead and there is Padraig walking in the village. Okay. Because what's happened is that we flew over Ireland itself, and now we've gone to this island. And I thought that was so good.
Really happens.
Yeah, right. And we see that same image very late in the film too. I don't know if you remember it, but when Siobhan goes to Ireland, we have another kind of scene of that same kind of looking at that same Irish thing again.
Yeah, and biological so,
remember
anyway, that. I think that was really, really, really good to see that too. I think that the movie is just beautifully knitted together. When you talk about editing, there's, the sound editing, the music editing, the film editing, and all those kind of things together. And it's just really beautifully done. Like it's like a fable, or some kind of a mythical story, but it's like a real story. And you remember the shopkeeper? That shopkeeper lady was hilarious. Remember anybody who came in there, she was asking if they had news. And of course, Padraig didn't have any news, but then the policeman told about somebody who had killed themselves and somebody that had stabbed his wife. And then, of course, we have Padraig mentioning that the policeman himself beats up his son every night.
Dominic's father.
I remember that, and he walks outside, and then the policeman comes out later and beats him really bad, knocks him down. Remember that scene?
Yep.
One thing where you really appreciate the attention to detail in the filming of our movie is like when Colm tells Padraig to leave and go to the pub and order some drinks for him. And that's like the final scene. And so, of course, after Padraig leaves, the dog gets up and the dog takes the shears and takes them out of the house. And then Colm stands up and walks over to the door and takes the shears away from the dog and shuts the door so that the dog is outside. And then he goes over and cuts off 4 fingers. I mean, it is when you know how really and truly it's kind of like the animals in this movie seem smarter than the people, or the
Yeah.
animals know more, like Jenny the donkey. Like, it's definitely true with dog. Remember, this dog is like a sheepdog. So remember, sheepdog are like the smartest dogs of all dogs, But I just love the way that was, photographed, the cinema. I guess that's really the cinematography. But
Yeah,
such a
the cinematography is really beautiful in the movie too.
Yep, it's just right on, and you really feel like in this movie that to get these performances and everything, and the way everything was done was very well thought out ahead of time. This is not one of those kinds of films where things just happen and so they let them happen. That happens in other films and that can be really cool and really useful, but not in this one, because this one is a really serious story about this friendship that is ending between these 2 men.
Yeah. Talking Cinema with Mike is brought to you by Nike Shoes. Hey guys, tired of having to walk to the pub all the time to get your pint of whiskey? Well, you can fix that with Nike Shoes. Special sneakers that will make you kiss those days of walking goodbye. Order now and become the sloppiest drunk on the island by St. Patrick's Day. Warning, we are not responsible for any drunken mishaps that can occur while wearing these shoes.
Yeah.
Kathie, did you recently heard about did you hear that the Banshees of Inisherin won big at the Golden Globes the other night?
Yes, I was so thrilled because the Banshees of Inisherin won the best movie. They call it musical or comedy. The Golden Globes has 2 different.
They split the movies.
They do. They're the only award that does that. And of course, the other movie was The Fabelmans, which is also
Which
a
I was also
fabulous
very happy
movie.
about.
Yeah, I was very happy about it. And then, of course, Martin McDonagh won for screenplay,
And
and
Colin Farrell won Best Actor.
Colin Farrell won for Best Actor, and Steven Spielberg won for screenplay. So it
Oh, he
was,
went for director.
and he won for director too. But he is very. It was the I just love it when the films win either director or screenplay, because the screenplay is really, like, to me, one of the really important prizes, and so I was really thrilled for that. I always used to think of the Golden Globes as sort of lightweight, but anyway, I did have some surprises. I was happy with who won.
Oh yeah, actually just yesterday, I think, or maybe it was Wednesday, the SAG Award nominations were announced, and
Yes,
he's got nominated for Best Ensemble in a Motion Picture.
that's right. That's right. I totally expect that he'll be not, this film and these actors and everything will be, there will be Oscar nominations for everybody. And
I was thinking, I think the Banshees has a chance of getting 8 nominations, based on what I've been reading. So I'm thinking picture, directing, actor, supporting actor for Brendan and Barry, supporting actress, original screenplay, and music score.
Yeah, all those things. It could easily win. If you talk about Oscars, of course, Oscars, they do have more more films in the mix, but I think it's they have given it to Carter Burwell before for his film, for his film scores. So I think it's very possible.
Yeah, the top 3 right now are Banshees, Fablemans, and Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Right.
They're the top 3 right now, Kathie.
That's right. I think so too. Although I really felt that the guy who played Elvis Presley, I felt really and truly that he really was great in that role. So I couldn't really, I thought that was totally appropriate.
And Elvis is getting a lot more like Elvis is probably going to get into the best picture mix because it's getting more love right now. And
Mhm.
like, and especially like in the technical categories like costumes and makeup.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if you like follow like all the award shows, but just yesterday the Producers Guild Awards, which are
Mhm.
usually like, oh, you follow those? Perfect.
I follow all of them this time of year. I do. Yes.
So, like
And
the
again, excuse
yeah,
me, when I see those nominations, I didn't really see everything that was there. I was sort of expected to me, you know,
yeah,
the
there were
big,
10 movies that got in a PG, and I would say like right now, like the definites for Best Picture this year are
Mhm.
going to Avatar: The Way
Excuse
of
me.
Water, Avatar: The Way of Water,
Yes.
Banshees of Inisherin, Elvis, Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Fablemans,
Yep.
Tar, and Top Gun Maverick.
Yep. I know it's going to be one of those. Remember, in the Oscars, they typically have 5 nominees. So I definitely think that the nominees for Best Picture are going to be, like you said, Elvis, Avatar, Banshees, Fablemans, and Top Gun. I think
Yeah,
that'll
like
be.
those are seven. Just I think there's gonna be 10, and like
Mhm.
based on what I've been reading, those last three slots,
Mhm.
like people are saying that the foreign film on Netflix, All Quiet on the Western Front, they're
Mhm.
saying that's gonna get on for Best Picture, Kathy, and I actually recently watched that a few weeks ago, and it is actually a really good war movie if you ever get the
Oh,
chance to
I'm
check
going to
it.
watch it. I just haven't got to it. The one that intrigues me is the fact that at the Golden Globes, a movie called Argentina 1985 beat out All's Quiet on the Western Front. It beat out Close, and it beat out Decision to Leave, which all won the grand prize at the Cannes Film Festival. So that really shockarooed me. So I am watching that movie this weekend. So
Yeah,
anyway, that
Decisions
movie
to
has
Leave, I
been
really
moved
want to
up and will
watch.
definitely probably be part of the mix for the Oscar nominations.
Probably like I also like I make like online predictions on Gold Derby,
Uh-huh.
which is
Oh, yeah, yeah.
everything,
Mhm.
not just like Oscars, but like all the award shows.
Mhm.
And like the top 10 right now on Gold Derby are the seven movies I recently told you, and
Mhm.
also All Quiet, Babylon, and Women Talking.
Uh-huh, yes, which I'm dying to see. See, I think that Women Talking could, we haven't seen that. It still hasn't gotten here. Have you gotten it up there to the movie
I
theater?
think it's supposed to come out like everywhere next Friday the 20th.
Okay, because there are a few films that we haven't seen, and that's one of them. So that's kind of like that can throw another monkey in the mix because it's supposed to be so really good. And again, it was on the big list. It's been on the list for so long and everything. So um, I really think that that's a possibility. But see,
Another
the foreign language films, also have made inroads in terms of nominations for picture, director, actors. And really and truly, the movie Close, I really thought that it had a chance. This movie, Corsage, which I just saw this week, which I thought was really good. And the one I really loved, Decision to Leave, which I really love. And that's another one that I thought might make it into the best picture nominations. So we'll have to see.
true like I heard that Women Talking like it wasn't nominated for Best Picture at the Golden Globes, but
Mhm.
it's nominated for Best Picture at the Critics' Choice Awards, and it's
Right.
nominated for Ensemble at the SAG Awards.
Oh, absolutely. And
So
it's
that will
also
probably like boost his chances.
right. The thing I really always pay attention to too is the National Board of Review, which comes out first. It usually comes out the 1st of December. So it's the first any kind of award thing. So it's in, that's, Women Talking is definitely in that list. The other ones that I pay attention to are the American Film Institute, and
Yep.
that is on that list. So there are, you know, in terms of the films that come out earlier in those other categories, the National Film Critics, their list too. I just think that Women Talking really has a chance of kind of throwing another wrench into this with the other movies, because if it hits big, like it might hit big, it's a very small movie, and it'll probably be on a small number of screens. So I don't know, it just really depends. But again, the people who are in the voting on Oscar, they get to see it. I mean, they have the screeners, you know, to be able to see it far more than we do. You know, we have to wait for either it to be on streaming or for it to be in movie theaters.
From what I've been hearing, like Women Talking is like an all-female version of the classic movie 12 Angry Men.
I think that's would probably a good, if you've
Which
read that or
I've
heard
seen.
that.
And because, you know, the movie's about a group of like women in 2010 and like their own private colonization, where they're trying to decide if they should like rise up against like their male like tormentors.
Yes, it's actually based on a thing that really truly happened in another country. But the
Yeah, and it's
movie,
also based on a novel.
yes, yes. But this one it's really based on something that really happened. So that has a lot of heft to it. But Sarah Polley has done great movies in the past. I've seen, you know, 2 or 3 other movies that she's made, and all her movies are great, you know.
And the
Yeah.
cast looks terrific. I mean, Rooney Mara, Jessie Buckley, Claire Foy, Frances McDormand.
Yep. It doesn't get any better. It's all the top-notch people, definitely. So it looks like it's going to be a really fascinating film to see. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Kathie, what do you really think is like, you said like, you really think like editing is like the real like magical part of filmmaking that really ties it together?
Yes, editing is like, you know, we have the various elements of film, and editing takes the elements of film and puts it into the actual art form. You know, we've got the acting, we've got the script, we've got the lighting, the costumes, all that stuff. But with editing, of course, that's what knits the story together.
It's
to
the
make
final
it,
touch.
yeah, brings it all together and gives it oomph.
Yeah, I mean, like even some of like the best like movies like have the, I can name like a bunch of movies that have great editing, like Requiem for a Dream, Whiplash, Mad Max Fury Road. Great editing.
Absolutely. Yes.
Movies.
The editing, if you look at that, you're going to see that a lot of those movies won the best, you know, the Oscar for best editing. A lot of the
Actually,
real
yeah,
action
Whiplash and Mad
movies.
Max Fury Road did actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it's just amazing, you know. Of course, there's different kinds of editing too. Remember, we have the editor of the film, but we also have the sound editors. You know, we have all these other kinds of editors that play into it also, you know, but the actual film editor is the one who pulls it all together, you know, who does the final cut. Yeah.